the road towards revolution, the tensions rising between the colonists and the British imperial system trying to rule from so far away over the ocean, and how the rising tensions escalated from various taxation methods, boycotting, and even the loss of life on today's edition of the Hauger History Podcast.
Welcome to the Hauger History Podcast, and here I am sitting for episode 100. Hoped for a bigger celebration, but you know what? I didn't want to leave my high school juniors out in the cold like it's Valley Forge. See what I did there? All right, some of you got that, some of you didn't. That's all right. We're going to talk about some of the key review units for the first chapter that we've been studying, which is The Road to Revolution. And we spent a lot of time in our classroom, because you might not be in my classroom, people listen to this all over the world, that we might be talking about the American ideals. And definitely in your classroom, you probably did. Those are the standards that we try to live up to as a country that were set by America's founding fathers. There were opposing groups when it came to fighting and whether or not we should go to war with England. And that was a battle between the Patriots and the Loyalists. The Patriots thought we absolutely needed to fight. We needed to be an independent nation. We needed to go and become self-governing and self-ruling. And then there were Loyalists who liked their life in the colonies, or perhaps thought it was foolish to launch a war with the top army in the world to that point. And so Patriots and Loyalists were strictly opposed. There were also moderates in the middle who weren't sure what to do. But those were the main two philosophies that were not sure about the best course of action. And a lot of people stayed unsure until the battles of Lexington and Concord. And those events spread war, and that really separated the course of action. There was no turning back at that point. Another key battle in the war, because we don't focus on every single battle, but looking at the bigger picture, the British defeated this battle was the beginning of the end of the war. And the turning point was Saratoga, and the beginning of the end, not the final end, which you might argue could be Yorktown. Saratoga, after we won that war, the French got involved, and the French donated supplies, weapons, leadership, training, clothing, and other assistance that helped us get over the hill and lead the final road towards victory. From there, our study and our assessment goes backwards. And it talks about the leading events that led to increasing tension. For example, the Stamp Act. Why was the Stamp Act enacted? Britain had been at war with France, and it had been very costly. It had cost them a lot of money, and they were hoping to recoup some of those losses. They looked to the colonists and said, "We've been protecting you from outsiders. We've been keeping you safe. It's time for you to pay up some taxes." And every legal document and piece of paper that was an official document would have a tax, and that was called the Stamp Act. As a result, the colonists started boycotting British goods, and the Stamp Act was repealed. From there, I'm going to ask you, explain how loyalties are different during the American Revolution. How could there be multiple perspectives? And we did a class activity where you got into groups and either played the part of King George in Parliament, the Loyalists, the Moderates, or the Patriots, and you had very different views on what should happen. So I'm going to ask you to explain those three. If you're King George, you want the colonists under your thumb and under control. You could talk about the Declaratory Act, which said that Britain had its supreme authority over the colonists. If you're a loyalist, you could talk about how England was your homeland. Maybe you still had family or friends or business partners overseas that you didn't want to alienate because you didn't want to risk damaging your business, or you thought it was foolish to go to war. Maybe you were a moderate, and although you felt that there was good argument for common sense that was written by Thomas Paine, or that you did think that there was some atrocity in the Boston Massacre, or that there was representation that was lacking for the taxation that had been applied, but you weren't sure that war was the best approach. Maybe you thought you could work this out diplomatically by sending some of your founding fathers over, or that politically you could work this out. You were a moderate. Or you were a patriot who was ringing the bell for war and telling the Minutemen to take up arms and get ready to fight. Those are some of the perspectives that you might discuss, and you could look back to your book or online for more information if you were seeking to flesh out those perspectives at greater length. So Britain keeps responding with further taxation. The Intolerable Acts pushed the colonists over the end, and that was after the Boston Tea Party severely offended the British, and so they placed the harshest codes yet. The Intolerable Acts were the toughest punishment yet. It was meant to punish the colonists for the damage to the Boston Tea Party. It was also called the Coercive Acts. They took away self-governance from Massachusetts. It shut down the port of Boston. They were key developments in the outbreak of the Revolutionary War. They hoped, on the British perspective, that it would make an example of Massachusetts of what happens when you don't obey. and reverse the colonial resistance to the parliamentary authority. And although it was unrelated to the other 4 acts that came earlier, it was passed in the same legislative session and seen by the colonists as one of the Intolerable Acts. It changed a lot of things. It said you couldn't travel to the Ohio country to settle, so you could only stay in the Massachusetts area. It also was seen as a violation of rights of Massachusetts, and that began the First Continental Congress to coordinate a protest against it, and that eventually led to the American Revolutionary War and the Declaration of Independence that would follow. Let's discuss some more about the Revolutionary War.
Patrick Henry says, "Give me liberty or give me death" on March 23rd of 1775, and on April 18th, the rides of Paul Revere and the much lesser known, as we talked about in class, William Dawes ride to warn about the upcoming clash that would happen at Lexington and Concord, with the shot heard around the world on April 19th.
So after these events and the victory at Saratoga, the French give money, supplies, weapons, and help, and America defeats the British at Yorktown. General Cornwallis surrenders the army. And once the War of Independence was over, we have some issues. We have some issues about how to govern society. I asked you for 2 of them on our classroom test. But 1, what kind of a government are you going to have? Is it going to be a monarchy like England? Are you going to enact the same kind of taxes that were just problematic a moment ago? Who was going to be your new ally and your new business partner? Because you just had a war with your number 1 trading partner in the world. So how are you going to have an economic system? How are you going to rule? Will each colony end up being its own state government? How's that going to work? Is there going to be any central authority at all or central government? So there's lots of questions that still remain to be answered. And the Articles of Confederation, once they are set up, have a lot of shortcomings about how to defend our country, about how to set up an economy. And we pass a Bill of Rights that are the first 10 amendments when the Constitution becomes drafted, and that gets hotly debated for a long time, and we are born a new nation. Thanks so much for listening to this episode of the Hauger History Podcast. I look forward to a great year together, and feel free to like, share, and subscribe, and we will talk to you on the next edition. Thanks so much. We'll talk to you later.